Just want to make a video here real quick on what nutrients I'm using in my hydro setup and what each one is used for. It's kind of overwhelming to see how many it is that there is if you've never used any of these before, but I'll go through it and hopefully it makes a little bit more sense. I start off when they're young and I use some Rapid Start. This really makes the roots very hairy, and it's the best thing I've ever seen for root growth when they're young, for clones and whatnot. This is absolutely insane, and I do use a little bit throughout its growth to keep the roots healthy and thriving, and I'm not sure if it's really necessary throughout the vegetative state, but a lot of root enhancers are also good for in a blooming stage, so I throw a little bit of that in also when it's blooming. And these two here, these are also for the roots, and well, this one here is more for roots than this one, I guess. I'm not really super sure about that one, but I added in there because everybody else does. So I'm not the best source information on Super Thrive, but the Orca, I know that one's a bacteria that is good for the roots and is healthy for the roots, and I add a splash of that in for every water change. I think I use 0.2 and I times that by how many gallons, and then that will tell me how many milliliters to use. So 0.2 times milliliters gives you the use of what I use on, I think, just about everything on the table here. It's about 0.2 times, wait a minute, the nutrients aren't up here. I forgot to add those. These are also in there. These are added at 0.5 times gallons. I'll get to those later. But this one's added 0.2 times gallons, and I use that every time I use a water change. And it's not really like a nutrient, it doesn't eat it up, but when you do the water change it kind of flushes it out, and it's still inoculated on the roots, but to give it a little boost every water change I give it a little bit more to help the inoculation and help it take over quickly and keep the roots protected and healthy. And then this here, this is silica. I use this throughout the entire grow. I don't use it on young seedlings. This is a stem growth strengthener. It's absolutely essential because you need strong stems to hold up the buds in the end, because they get super heavy and start sagging and hanging over, and if you got weak stems you're not going to make it to the end. This also will increase your pH, so I put this in before I put anything else in the water. This is the very first thing I put in the water, because then I can move on to pH and I can get it into the right pH, because the rest of the stuff doesn't really affect the pH as much as the silica does. So I'll go silica, then I'll pH the water, and then I'll add all the nutrients, and then at the end I'll check the pH again, and then I'll adjust it just slightly, you know, just wherever it needs to be. So then these here, these are used during this one I think is the I don't know, I'd have to get back to this, but one of these is for flowering and one of these is just for like all the way through the vegetative and flowering cycle. I don't know, I guess maybe I'm not the best source information on these, but one of them's like a carbohydrate, maybe they both are, but it's kind of necessary. It's kind of like molasses, kind of like, you know, it gives it the carbohydrates that it needs to burn through more nutrients. And then this right here is humic acid, and this is like a nutrient booster. Somehow the molecules are able to collect nutrients in the water, the iron and copper and whatnot, and somehow it, with the atoms and whatnot, is complicated, and I didn't really understand it all, but it's very good nutrient processing or something, I don't know. But I've been adding that with it, and it is a new ingredient for me. So I start using that after the seedling cloning age, after it gets a little bit older into the vegetative, and then I plan on using that all the way through the blooming stage also. And this here is a foliage spray, and this will fight off any fungus and insects and problems and whatnot that you have. There's some things like some sulfur or something like that, some other sprays or something that you can't mix it with, and you can't use this like twice within the same 10 days. So this stuff's kind of heavy duty stuff, and there's some warnings on the label that you need to read up on, but this will take care of, I think it takes care of white mold and then pests and stuff. So sometimes you need it, especially when you're working with soil, because there's a lot of eggs and stuff whatnot in this soil that you can't even avoid. And some of this here, I'm not the best source of information on this one, but I use this during the blooming cycle, and I just use a pinch of it. I don't use much of it because I don't really know anything about it, and I think you can over fertilize the rear very easily with it, so I just add a pinch. Somebody recommended it, and I added. This here I've never used. I forget why I bought it and why it was recommended, but I probably saw a video on it that said it was the bomb or something, so I got it. So I'll plan on using that during my blooming cycle for my hydro. And then these here are the main nutrients, and I keep the water about 1,000 parts per million with these, and then I slowly increase it every couple of days. Between water changes I'll feed, so I don't wait for it to deplete before I do a water change and feed them again. I just kind of bring it up to maybe 800 parts per million when I do a water change, and then the next day I'll bring it up to 900, and the next day I'll bring it up to 1,000, and then I'll just kind of keep it there at 1,000 and, you know, wait a couple days, and then it'll eat some off, and then I'll give it another feeding, get it back up to about 1,000 parts per million, and then wait a couple days, and then by then it's ready for a water change. So this stuff I just slowly kind of add to the water, and it goes in a specific order. You have to add it together in the reservoir in this order. You cannot mix the concentrates together. They will have a bad reaction and knock each other out. It's not dangerous. It's not going to make a gas or anything that I know of anyways. But they just say don't mix them and concentrate together. So I go 0.5 times however many gallons, and then I go 0.5 on this one times however many gallons, and I go 0.5 on this one times however many gallons, and then it changes throughout the life cycle. I will always add it into the water in this order, but the parts, the per parts I mean, will change. When it's in the vegetative, it will go 3 parts, 2 parts, 1 part. This will always be 2 parts. When it switches over to bloom, switch these around. 3 parts, 2 parts, 1 part. That's when you're in flower cycle. When you're between vegetative, getting ready for flower, you want to go 2, 2, 2. But don't forget to add it in the water into this order. So hopefully I explained that correctly and that you can understand. It's got to mix into the water into this order: micro, grow, bloom. And when it's in the vegetative stage, you go 3 parts, 2 parts, 1 part. And to get how many milliliters, it is 0.5 times how many gallons your system is. And then after you're done with vegetative and you're switching over into bloom, you go 2 parts, 2 parts, 2 parts, equal amount, 0.5 times however many gallons. It would be maybe 50, 60 milliliters, something like that, if you're running about 20, 30 gallons, something like that. And then when you go to bloom, switch these around. Now this one gets 3 parts, this one gets 2 parts, and this one only gets 1 part. So that's that. I'll show you the babies. Doing very nicely. The new growth is a light green. It just needs to catch up. The iron is just very slow to catch up. It'll turn it nice dark green though. And my parts per million are already above 900. And that's a lot for youngsters. Yeah, it's up to 1,000 here. My pH is a little bit high. I will be bringing that down slowly. It's just I've been adding so much pH drop to it. I can't believe that it's dropping so slow. But sometimes you do need to use a lot of pH, but add it in increments and drop it slow. You don't want to overdo it, and then you have to go back the other way again. And then right here, I got a new project. I'm making some hooch. It kind of foamed over a little bit this morning, but this one's just for fun. But when I go into flower, I'm gonna get a 5-gallon bucket. I'm gonna do the same thing, and I'm gonna put this 5-gallon bucket inside the tent so that it has plenty of CO2 while it's flowering. So this one is orange juice wine, and I use orange juice concentrate from Walmart. And I got all the ingredients and everything to kill all the bad bacteria, so there's no worries. I'm doing everything right. And I just wanted to supplement my own CO2, and I figured this is the best way to do it. That way I get some wine out of it too. But that's that. That's my nutrient explanation. Hopefully you got it.